Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. The Grant. My name is Niels Tuller Winter, and I'm the creator, editor, and host of The Grant. The Grant is an independent podcast initiative with the ambition to dig into all corners of the EU R&D funding system and topics of interest for the full EU R&D funding community. As a proposal writer, there are so many layers to deal with when you start the writing process. But one of the key elements that all proposal writers run into is on which leg to put the weight in the written text: storytelling or the technical aspects. It is of course an impossible either or, but there are a lot of in-depth reflections hidden in that dichotomy. Because some are good at stories, some are good at being text-specific, but what all need to play up against is the evaluation regime and how proposals are being perceived by the ones that rate your efforts. Diana Huber, Erasmus Plus proposal expert and regular on The Grant, and Christine Cieslak, evaluation expert, invited themselves into the virtual podcast studio to discuss this key aspect of proposal writing. Diana from the point of view of a proposal writer, and Christine from the perspective of an evaluator. And we managed to have a very honest and enlightening exchange on the topic. Please enjoy. Grant. Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. I start to get requests here and there. It took a while. I've been doing this for 3 years now, and actually when I started the podcast, I thought I would much more often get requests on joining my podcast. But this is how it is. Building up takes a while. Now, I've started to slowly here and there, people, they reach out and say, well, maybe we could have a discussion about this and this topic. And especially the ones that have been in the show before, they start to make callbacks. And Diana, you are almost a regular, I would say, been in the show a couple of times now. Welcome back.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Niels, for having us. And thank you for doing the work that you're doing. You are one of the very, very few voices and platforms that opens up the conversation on the grant writing. And we need more of this. This is really essential. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, of course. And Christine, welcome in.
Thank you for having me as well for the first time.
Yeah, and let's just have a short introduction so you both get the chance. But I'll start with the newbie. So, Christine, a few words about yourself.
Of course. So I am originally from Germany, but the last 10 years I'm Brussels-based, so in the bubble. So I'm a gerontologist and adult educator and lifelong learning graduate, which then led me to become an EU program strategist and evaluation expert eventually. And over the last 15 years, I've worked for the Parliament, NGOs, private firms, but always against the background of adult education and learning. And in this, I have worked for 6 national agencies, actually, up to this point, and have...
well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt.
You did. It's too late now. No, I just wanted to. You can cut when it's too long, but it's done now.
All right. Diana,
which you cut out now, please. Part.
Diana, 2 words about yourself, 2 lines.
Well, when you say Diana and 2 words in the same sentence, it clashes because Christine knows we've been working together, and I'm exceptionally blessed to have this experience of working with wonderful, wonderful women all over Europe, running the European project management teams. And this is an underrated profession. And here I'm giving a shout out to all my female colleagues in the industry. It's a tough one, and we try to make it kinder. I'm here in my quality of grant developer, of public policy developer. I exist because European Union has the concept of the grants, and someone has to take charge of that. my everyday work is reflected in criminal correctional justice. So I'm also known as the prison lady in some environments, or the EU money lady in other environments, depending where you sit. But like Christine, my base is adult education, and we share a couple of interesting projects together. And again, very wonderful to have people like her in my profession.
Thanks. Now, let's just have a short fly-in here on before we get to the content of what of the show. So the approach was concerning having a conversation about creative proposal writing and technical proposal writing, and the paradox that often is because where the evaluators focus is on this and how you place yourself as a proposal writer in between those two chairs, because obviously you need a bit of some. You cannot stand on too much on one leg and the other. So it's a ubiquitous dilemma that you stand with as a proposal writer on how to deal with this. How will your proposal be perceived if you lean too much towards the other? So that's the idea, and that's why we have a skilled proposal writer like you, Dan, and an evaluator, Christine, on board, to sort of have an exchange and conversation about from the two sides. So, do you, any of you, want to put some words on the fly and on this tension between these two?
I would like to share that this conversation is relevant for younger colleagues that want to step up into the grant writing business, regardless if it is Erasmus or any other co-funded program from the European Commission. This is relevant for them to try to calibrate where they will invest their time and their focus as personal development time. And it's also relevant for colleagues that are quite seasoned and had some experience with this, because we constantly need to be on the update side of the game. But also, we need representation. We need a voice. We need to have these conversations public. It's not like we are a shameful cast of professions. We are actually the guys that make public policy run, even if no one is putting this part of the story up in the air until now. Now you do it. Now you have us on the topic. So I think this is interesting to be listened and to join the conversation. And I want to extend this challenge also to other colleagues to hop in the conversation.
Yeah. Christian, you want to say?
Absolutely, couldn't agree more, although I would even extend it to seasoned professionals, simply because if you, for example, ask me which one I do prefer, like which route, if it's the technical versus the creative route of proposal writing, my answer is unfortunately yes. So you have to have both in a sense. So having this conversation is crucial, and having it also at this point is very crucial.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Eleonora. I work for Science Business, and I always listen to The Grant.
Excellent. Let's just move into the first key block here. So, from the proposal writer's view, we'll start out with that. And Diana, maybe I'll let you pick up the torch and the word here. So, writing a proposal. Any proposal in this world towards public or privacy, whatever, you have conditions that you need to fit to approach that fund. Now, especially naturally the big funding schemes from the European Commission, it's an art because there's so many elements that you need to capture there, and you have this. So what we started out with, you have tick box writing, and then you have the creativity of what is it? The left side of the brain. So you know, like, how do you do?
Right. Before we step into this conversation, there is a very short caveat on why this is relevant And this caveat has 2 points. New technology, new instruments flying all over the place, and you need to be very careful on which rabbit hole you choose to fall through, because you might end up wasting time, money, interest, whatever. So watch out for instruments. Not everything that ticks is relevant. Second, we have the European Commission that handed out to the Parliament the next programmatic period documentation. That is one of the essential documents for our profession for the next period from 2026 onwards. So now it is the moment to rethink, recalibrate, you reposition yourself as a writer, because we have the map in front of us and we need to figure out what is the software that our GPS is going to run for the next period. Caveat closed. What is it for me? There is this sacred cow in our profession called the writing skills or the writing competences, and everyone assumes that this is the driver for success, and they try to portray it or paint it as either technical or creative. Like Christine said at the start, the answer is yes, meaning both and married somehow. And the actual challenge is that it is about positioning your idea and your content in an ecosystem, creating a coalition of partners that provides credibility, and pre-writing your political alignment. You do these 3, and then we step into the conversation of actually what is your writing balance and how much you are data ninja samurai assassin, or how much you're some sort of a haiku writer that gives all the interesting comparisons. So it's not a simple conversation of either or, and a lot of our colleagues are missing the first 3. And you start just by writing. No, it is ecosystem, coalition, and policy.
And I know you as one that you actually study the documents, the background documents. You studied the policy papers.
Yes.
You start, and this is, I can reassure you that many grant writers, the majority of grant writers, they do not study these documents. So I know you're very thorough in this. So this is this is my understanding from you as a professional that you take this as a baseline.
And I take it not only as a baseline, but also as a proudness in my profession. And I want to make my profession credible. We are people that we actually know what we are talking about, not from the perspective necessarily of the topic that we want to obtain the grants for, but behind the principles, the European way of life, starting from the Lisbon Treaty onwards, we need to read why do we exist, why the funding is available, who put us on the map in this context, and what are we choosing? Because grant writing is choosing to support, to favor, to promote, to dismantle, to destroy a public policy.
Now, if we look a little bit at the storytelling, so we all know, and Christine's probably gonna nod, that any good proposal will have there's a red line, there's a build-up of tension like in a novel, but there's a narrative to follow in relation to the challenge you need to solve. And that gives a technical challenge or a school-related educational challenge or whatever. Like there's a narrative that you need to build up to make it convincing that this approach to solving the issue is one that is most likely going to solve it. And that you can never get rid of if you're very good, if you're a very good engineer that writes proposal, but you lack a lot of being able to create a narrative, then it needs to be deciphered by a person that's also an engineer to understand why it's a good proposal. But if it's a technical or whatever, that is being wrapped in a code of something that anybody can understand, or at least anybody with an academic education, no matter which field, that they can read and say, okay, this sounds like a convincing argument to solve this issue. Now, how much do you think about that, Diana, when you work?
That's a very...
And how do you, because a lot of the things that I'm going to stop talking in a second, but it's actually something that I care a lot about, because I have myself been doing idea development for proposals when I was a grant consultant. I was the one that was creating the narrative. I didn't write it out. I had better people than me for the right, but I created the narrative. I created the why and how can you do this and follow it. But how do you do? How do you build this up?
That is the complex conversation, because
that's why we're here.
We in our grants foresee or try to solve or try to approach or try to tackle problems in the good grants that no one saw them coming. We are almost like manifesting a future among 100 other possibilities. We are selecting a possible future and hope that we selected the good one, because there are so many grants that get up and implement and generate new ecosystems that no one has ever thought possible. And we can have another podcast on that topic alone. So that is a bit of a technical part, and that is also a bit of a puzzle working. But then you figured out what you want to address. And imagine that you are going to write it under the format of a furniture assembly instruction guide. Have you ever read one of those guides? No, you throw it out and you do your own furniture, and you figure out along the way how it's going to sit straight or not. So why would I want to write something that I don't want to read? Would you like to read your very own narrative? If yes, then perfectly fine. That is the starting point. And then you get to have clear narrative, creative narrative, or compliant narrative. You have 3, and you can pick out of them only 2. So go figure out, do you want to have it clear and compliant? You might end up having an instruction manual on how to land an Airbus while you have only driven a bicycle. Not interesting, and you lose your audience. You can have it clear and creative. Maybe then you are going to miss the compliant and have an exceptional story that is not eligible for your grantor or doesn't hit the requirements. Or you can have it creative and compliant, and then you spin off so many stories inside of one story that you're like Geoffrey Chaucer. Your evaluator is tired before they get to the second section of it. So that needs to be thought of. But it is a story. I'm telling the story from the ground level of practitioners that people working like myself in the Brussels bubble have never heard. I'm bringing on a fresh, crisp, clear point of view, but from real people that have stories to say.
Okay, so you work together with your partnership to create that. So it's not just in your head. You make ping pong with your peers in the partners in the project to make it crisp.
I make ping pong. Not with my partners, because most of them also struggle a bit with figuring out what I'm talking about. I'm making ping pong. Yeah, that's true. That's one of conversation. Again, nobody's talking about. And again, it deserves a separate episode about the partnerships and how you run them. I'm making ping pong, and this is the one ping pong that you cannot do without, with my end users, stakeholders, beneficiaries, call them how you want, people on the ground.
Which
that is the essential
one. Partners in the proposal,
which are going to be affected once our institutional partnerships deploy the project, implement the project. I'm talking about, in my case, if I want to do some sort of reform on how officers are being trained in European prisons. I actually go, like open the door and set foot inside a European prison and be one of the guys and ask, what would you like to be trained on if rainbow was the limit and you had a pot of gold with all the money? What would you like your colleagues to have access in terms of training? What do you feel burdens you the most? What pains you? What is the story that you want Europe to hear about you? And it's my job as a creative and technical writer to figure out how to put that in a grant that apparently has nothing to do with people and has everything to do with politics and policy.
Because that idea development process, that is essentially that's a square root of what happens, where you need to both deal with your creative side and having the technical precision, so to say, or dealing with the technical elements that you need to have in there.
Absolutely. If you are going to write one of the big projects of Europe that changes European public policy on something, you need to know the stories of the people that are affected by that specific policy. Even if you're not an expert, you don't need to be an expert. You shouldn't be an expert. You need a fresh perspective that no one has ever thought about, but just go with that fresh perspective and listen to the people that are being affected by what you do, or what you will hopefully do, are your best teachers and trainers and mentors.
Yeah. On that note, maybe we move into the next block, because now we've been talking a lot about how you work and how you work with this dichotomy, so to say, or this how to make sure that you balance things. Christine, the evaluators view. Can you share a little bit more detail your work as an evaluator? And
absolutely. I mean, to be fair, Diana already put a lot out there that I personally also believe in, and I was nodding, just as you said I would, because
I confirm that.
I hope so.
To the listeners,
I think that application writing, and we have already mentioned that the EU programs are vast and vary, and there's so many, but they have one thing in common, that it's one of the most demanding writing styles you have to choose. because you have to balance storytelling and technicalities. And I liked the term storytelling, because you do have to convince the person who then eventually will read what you've produced of whatever it is that you want to do. And we're talking about projects, sure, some of them might be short, but most of them are then stretching over years, right? So it will eventually be turning into a story. But unlike other forms of writing, you don't really have the luxury that you can develop your theory or idea while you're writing. So you don't have the length of a full article to develop whatever your idea is or your thought process. So you have to already fully understand what it is you want to do. You have to understand the subject of your project. You have to understand the management aspects of your projects, how to implement it, who is involved, and you have to understand your target group. And surely, last but not least, surely, is you have to understand the funding program. How is it embedded? And that's exactly what Diana was saying. You would have to read a lot, but everything that's provided to read on how to write, when to write, what to write, it's very bubble speak. It is very technical, to say the least. So you cannot expect people to dive into that alongside their daily work. Just to give you an example, I today was supposed to write on something GDPR related today. So I pulled up the law, the actual GDPR law, and I saw it's 88 pages. And I started reading. And at page 10, I was asking myself, oh, silly me, I'm reading it in English. Surely if I download it in German, it's quicker to read, right? So I downloaded it in German, and in fact, it wasn't quicker to read. So all these guidelines and laws around funding application, they're incredibly technically, which they have to be. But yet you still have to understand how to use that in your application, right? So you have to understand everything, your subject, your project, your target group, the funding program. And then, like Diana said, you have to explain it to somebody who's maybe unfamiliar with the topic, but then you have the limited word count. So it's incredibly challenging, and especially for people who haven't been previous consultants in application writing, who are just actually being let's say,
working for an NGO or innovation cluster or whatever.
Somebody who's taking care, like somebody who's taking care of like troubled teenagers. So somebody who would like to have single immigrant mothers to be better integrated into your neighborhood. So how are you supposed to even start write an application? And even with people who have a routine in writing these applications, like how do you walk the fine line between over-explaining and then just throwing buzzword outs and hope something sticks, right?
Here we are putting the stick into something that is also one of my, things that I've been focusing on in my over these many years of what you have. The Commission wants so much to reach all the target groups with their funding schemes. They want everybody, giving them a possibility to approach the funding schemes. All corners of the socio-economy, not just, of course, like Horizon Europe, the technical parts, but also the weak groups, the NGOs, the educational system, so on and so forth. But especially the second half here that I just mentioned, they're not professionals, and the conditions that they set up to approach the funding, at least the European funding, I know Diana has this idea we don't all have to be good proposal writers. No,
Yes.
that's true. But if the money is democratized, so to say, to an effect that it is handed out there to people that do sports for handicapped, or NGOs that work with immigrants, or whatever, hearing impaired, whatever. People that do this they have very little money normally in these kind of organizations, and they, above all, organizations that could really need funding once in a while for projects like this to do something. But they're also the ones that have the least time and they don't have the resources to pay someone good to do it. And they wouldn't have the time to sit down and learn how to do this properly in between the job that they actually do. So that's, and this goes with many. It's also in the SME corner on the technical side for hirers. It's the same. You have a very, very technically difficult application process and you want people who do not understand that system to approach it. SMEs, and we're not just talking 250 people that actually are certain, but you're also talking 10 people that just try to make ends meet, with the idea they have created. It's the same corner. It's the same problem, that you have a system that so much wants to give out money, but because it's such a big monster, they have created a huge system with so many barriers and stop go, so to say, before you can reach that. It's just going to scare people away. Now, from an evaluator's point of view, how often do you see this? Do you actually see through this when you read applications? Because it's Erasmus, you're Erasmus Plus, you're evaluating, right?
So
how often can you actually detect that here it's actually some people that would really need the money, but the proposal, I have a competing one here. It's through the roof, but it's obviously a corner. They have money. But these guys over here, do you see this?
I definitely will answer that question. But if you allow for me to just take the tiniest detour, and I'm pretty sure Diana will aggressively start nodding when I start my next sentence. I have been in and around funding programs of the EU for the last 15 years. And I started out, and I sound like a broken record, and everybody who knows me knows I always start with this topic. I started with a program for lifelong learning. I have worked with these programs in different functions, applicants, project manager, implementing the projects, or even just being a case manager for a national agency. And you have to look, when you discuss these problems of application burdens, you have to look at how the program is structured. So basically, when the shift happened from Program for Lifelong Learning to Erasmus Plus in 2014, we had a complete 180 of how things were structured. So in the Program for Lifelong Learning, we had the different funding branches that were basically looking at the target group. So I want to fund higher education. I want to fund VET. I want to fund ALE, adult learning and education, and I want to fund sports, right? Mm-hmm. And in these branches, you then had to decide how you want to do that. Do you want to do individual funding, or do you want to do a project, or do you want to do God knows what, right? So this completely was turned on its head in 2014. So what we have now is, first we have to decide, how do we want to do our project? Do we want to do individual funding, KA1? Do we want to do project partnerships in whatever shape or form, K-Action 2? Or do we want to do policy stuff, K-Action 3? So with this came a lot of restructuring. So there was a lot of target group that got lost because they were used to a certain problem. And Diana already were pointing at it, that you have your group of people, right, that you have to include because you want to do a project. The whole Erasmus Plus what did you call it? A jungle? No, what did you call it, Niels? A monstrosity.
Community? No.
And
Yeah,
anyways, I don't quite know what you called it, but I find it quite fitting. It was so this big construction now is trying to accommodate everybody, but it got so complex, and it lost some of its simplicity from when it was like flipped upside down. So now we've lost a lot of people that wrap their head around the former structure, right? So now you can argue, okay, well, but that's 10 years ago, so people get used to it, right? Yes, people get used to it, but it takes a while. It takes them a couple of years to learn again how to apply it. And then you cannot forget that every year, there's a reason why we have a program guide coming out every year, because the rules keep adjusting. And the commission itself, I think they're learning as well. They see what goes and what doesn't go. So basically, they come up with an idea thinking, oh, this will help people, right? They put it out, and then the application round is over, and then country XYZ wasn't able to give out 60% of their funds. So then the EU has to think, what's happening? They have to talk to the national agencies. What happened? Why do you think that is? And so on and so forth. So it's a very slow process, and very slow processes have the downside that you lose a lot of people. Because just coming back to the organization you've mentioned, you have your 10 people organization that just wants to do good, but they don't have the funds to hire a fancy consultant that's writing the application for them. For them, it's crucial. Do they get the funds or not? Will they make it to next year or not? Will they be able to pay for the project manager or not? So there's some friction that just generates simply because of the nature of the program in itself. It's an organic program, and it's adapting. But people are then naturally always behind adapting to the new rules. It's just the nature of things. So we're losing applicants simply because of the structure and the changes of the structure. And that's at a point where we didn't even talk about what the structures are, simply just looking at it from the outside. There you already have a lot of people that don't have the time, the capacity, or simply the manpower to even start digging into these documents, let alone master them.
Yeah. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Denitsa. I'm from Science Business, and we always listen to the grant, so it's coming up, and please tune in. Is that okay?
Excellent. Now, I want to try to connect this to where we started with talking about creative storytelling and the technical parts that you need to be able to. So, but it's been very important what we've been talking about here, and I think maybe a nodding out there. Just a quick asterisk. Christine mentioned here national agencies didn't manage to hand out funding. This is in Erasmus Plus, my dear listener, for the ones who are not familiar how Erasmus Plus functions. Horizon Europe is a centrally managed system that hands out the money from Brussels, from the agencies, but Erasmus Plus, some calls are managed by the national agencies, so in each country, and it's being evaluated also. It's here. It's related, and if you approach for such a call, then your application will be looked at in Germany, France, the countries that are present in the consortium. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. You have certain projects that you apply for directly in Brussels, and you have projects that you have to apply for in your respective country. I actually once attended somewhat of a feedback round with the Commission, where actually there was the issue raised that it's even difficult for the Commission to get the feedback from the field, because you have to consider how many layers are in between. We're talking about somebody who is having a great idea about project implementation and how to bring more funding to the people, quote unquote. And then you have the national agencies, in our case, what we're talking about right now. But then you don't even have just one national agency. Depending on the population of the country, or in our case, I'm like I said, I'm located in Belgium. We have 3 different language communities. Ergo, we have 3 different national agencies. So then you have these, and then you have sometimes, depending on how big the national agency is, you have different thematic groups that are working within the national agency, and rababa, so on and so forth. So there's many layers, and it is very difficult to communicate almost through these layers.
Thanks. Yes, indeed. So the complexity of the whole structure is it's adding to the to what is can be frustrating as a proposer, right? And now I wanted to, Christian, in relation to you when you are evaluating proposals and thinking about creativity and technical, like these 2 sides, how do you assess? Do you sometimes say, okay, these ones, there's a lot of creativity, less technical, but it's actually okay. They and the other way around. Okay, these guys are very technical, this creativity. Okay, it functions. It's like, how do you, when you read the proposals as an evaluator, because that's what people are very interested in out there. What do you put as sort of assessment points? When you get things in.
Yes. So maybe to begin with, there is a lot of information officially given by the Commission. So just disclaimer-wise, I have to refer to just anything official that's coming from the Commission is the go-to place. Everything that I regurgitate here is basically just very subjective, very informal information.
It's okay.
So I've been doing this for a long time. So the biggest difference is when you read something, you can tell whether or not somebody fully understood what they're saying. Now, that sounds very complex, right? Abstract. Sorry, it sounds very abstract. But it comes down to the whole storytelling. The assessors do have very, very detailed instructions, guidelines, check boxes. So it is not that assessors generally sit down and decide, oh, today is a nice sunny day, I shall hand out free fonts. That's not how that works. Mm-hmm. So obviously, you have the Guide for Expert, which is publicly available. You have the assessment criteria absolutely in detail in the program guide, and everybody can read that. Now, going down to a very concrete level, as long as you tell your story, and I know it sounds almost redundant, but it just is how it is. If you tell your story, if you're being truthful, and if you saying what you want to do, why you want to do it, and why that makes sense, that is always a good start, because sometimes people try to anticipate what is behind the question. Mm-hmm. So when there is a specific question in the application form, people try to think like 3 steps ahead and, oh, what could be meant by this question? It's literally just a question. If the question says, what color does do your walls in your living room have? Then that's literally what you're supposed to write down. There is no hidden agenda. There's no trick you can play. And people, sometimes people get carried away. Yeah, They wanna convince. They wanna basically almost push the idea, and then you fall into very silly traps. People lie. And I have this very, very famous story that I heard around Five Corners, where an assessor was reading an application. And within the application, it said, oh yeah, our dissemination strategy is very great. We will publish on this and this website. And this specific evaluator was actually working for that website. So they would know that that's not possible, because that's not how that works. See, the assessor pool is very broad, so that they can basically cover all the topics, and you have assessors who are actually familiar with topic XYZ. So yeah, it almost sounds almost ridiculous, but do not lie. It seems to be, so just don't. You will get caught. And also,
or if you don't, you know what the thing is, if they catch you with something, they think, what are they lying about else?
Oh, 100%.
That's the thing. Obviously, if you get that, but
100%. And if you do not know what you're talking about, you can get away with it in many areas of life. Fake it till you make it, but not in applications. You have to know. I see Diana. Diana is muted, but she's agreeing. But yeah, it's just don't lie, and don't throw any impressive buzzwords at me, like, oh, we're gonna do X, Y, Z, and we're gonna do this, and this person will come
everything
around.
AI.
And
everything with AI.
And then this person will come along, and they're a huge fan of our project. Oh, are they? How so? Where's this person coming from? Like, how does this person even know about your project? So don't make stuff up, because you will get caught, and don't throw around empty buzzwords, because they don't let me know anything about your capability of actually implementing the project. So just be honest.
Yeah. Diana, do you have anything to say?
Do I have? Yes, please write your proposals, not as if you are going to win them, but write your proposals as if it's okay for you to fail, but you are going to keep that partnership. Think in that terms. And if you're writing loads and loads of silly things that are making your partner's life complicated, that are not true, that are inventions. Imagine that you're going to meet for a cup of coffee tomorrow morning, that partnership, and they will tear you apart. Would you like to write such a project? No. Stop writing projects that you don't implement. Because if you are killing people in implementation, your career as a writer, it's not going to be a very long one.
Is this a common thing in Erasmus Plus?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
But how can you pull that through?
Because there are a couple of things. It comes out of the specificity of this ecosystem. Like Christina explained, it is technical, it is sciencey, it is knowledge-based, you really, really have to be trained to understand this ecosystem. It's not a shame to say that you are professionalized in this. We are not training to get some money and run away to Cayman Islands with them and deplete the end users out of their possibilities. No, it's okay to say that you're trained and you're specialized in grant writing, because not everybody needs to. And this is why we work in a partnership. And in a partnership that are people that represent the technical part, are people that represent the creative heart part, are people that represent the end users, the policies. This is why I keep saying you need to have a good partnership. And if you miss parts of this partnership, and you only have the people that know how to write, but you don't have people that represent the end users, you end up with proposals that are impossible to implement, that are disconnected from the reality, that are spinning buzzwords, and then the implementation team reads it at the first project meeting and everyone is looking at each other asking, okay.
Who's going to do this?
But not who's going to do. What is this that we have to do? Because this is a concept, theoretical, but we don't have any practice for it.
That's why you won the money.
So, that is complex. Christine, you wanted to say something, right?
I just wanted to jump in because maybe Diana can also say a word or two to that. So a couple of years, please don't quote me on when that was. A couple of years ago, they limited the word count. I think it was 2 years ago in the Erasmus Plus. And
yes,
it's before it was endless. You could write your application, Dear Diary, and you could just go on. People, obviously there was different feedback. Some people were not happy with that. I must say that if you really know, and I know I'm dwelling on it, but if you really know what it is that you want to do and why you want to do it, you can totally fit that in that box. You can, if the box is too small, then you have to break down your idea even more. And if you can't do that, then you have to go back and just collect yourself again and try to just say, what do you want to do and why? That's the most important thing, because one of the biggest things that you want to do with your application is you want to show. And again, you don't want to convince, you don't want to push. You just want to show, like Diana said, you have to accept to fail. And that has nothing to do with, well, it has quite a bit to do with whether or not you're good or bad. But it has also a lot to do with who else is applying. How good of writers are they? And maybe they are just a mini point better than you, but then you're already out. Not completely, but I don't want to go into too much detail how the ranking system works. But maybe your application is really good, but there's just so many other applications that are great. So what do I actually want to say? I actually want to say, use the word count that's there and trust that if you fully understand what it is that you want to do and how you want to do it and why you want to do it, the space will be enough. Diana, I don't know if you agree or disagree. I don't know if this is a controversial one.
Yes.
The space is never enough.
So Christine is talking about...
All proposal writers, the space is never enough.
Christina is talking about the decentralized proposals, which I hate with foaming at my mouth. This is how much I hate them because... yeah, that's an evocative image. This is what I am doing with my evaluators. No, I don't do decentralized because I don't see eye to eye with the national agencies. Policy-wise, conceptual-wise, I have a different perspective. I write the Erasmus that is centralized proposals. And why? Because I do not do word count. In my writing, and Christine knows because she had the misfortune of having to read one as a peer, as a colleague, not as an evaluator, just as a colleague. She had this misfortune, and I like to be the next Thomas Mann, and I'm writing the Buddenbrooks every time that I'm writing an application. I drown my evaluators. I shroud them in a narrative, and I like to take them by the hand and waltz them around all sorts of pyramids and hieroglyphs and explain to them that these were the aliens that descended. And at the end of the narrative, the evaluators are saying, We have no idea what the F is she talking about, but she sounds so convincing, and the colors are so pretty and the shapes are so interesting that let her break her neck in the implementation. And we are just going to watch her. 15 years later, I still haven't broken my neck, and now I am trying to score somewhere in the area of 3 to 5 million euros per round, just because there are people that after 12 years of implementation came and said, you have absolutely changed our life, our working place. You have changed how politics run in our profession. You have changed how policy is being influenced in Europe because you gave us the platform to have a voice. It's as simple as that.
Absolutely. Like, I can only agree. Maybe just as a quick a side note, the programs have very strict rules when it comes to who can read what. And just to underline that, I was reading what she was writing, like she said, as a peer, and I can confirm it's good writing. It's good writing, but she likes words. I can absolutely positively agree. She likes words, but she also uses them well. But yeah, maybe as a compromise, I can see how Diana's working style might not be so easily implemented with the decentralized applications. But I stand with what I said. I believe that the limited word count is sufficient to bring across what you want to do in these projects that you have to say they're like a fraction of the projects you're applying for in their budget. So naturally you have to explain more, and the running time from the projects you are applying for much longer.
Whether you have 5,000 characters or, like in the proposals that I write, 120 pages to go full on board, the idea is what I have seen and identified with, and what I believe is relevant for all my colleagues. Keep in mind that people reading what you write, they don't fall in love with your originality. This is not fundamental science. We are not competing for the Nobel Prize in Literature. It's not about that. They do fall in love with recognizability. I don't know if even this is a English word. When they recognize the image that you're planting in their head. What does that mean? Me going back to my same old boring conversation. You have to read your politics and your policy. Everyone in the evaluation game is being trained and coached based on the European policy. There is no excuse, there is no way, there is no shape or form in which you can call yourself a grant writer and not read the European policies. That is inadmissible. That is a shame to the profession. That is, and I fully am behind what I'm saying. I'm an exceptional, authentic person, and everyone knows that I'm telling things exactly as they are. I do not want to be in the same guild, because this is a guild. It's like the Hanseatic League. I don't know how to say it. It's like the Olympians. We are running on a success rate of 8%. Please explain to me what other industry has an 8% success rate, and then we can have a conversation. So we are the Olympians in our profession. I do not want to be on the same team with a colleague and I ask them, what is the Treaty of Lisbon? And they don't know what the Treaty of Lisbon is. That is unacceptable.
Well,
full stop.
You'll be surprised, as I mentioned in the beginning, where we also touched it, 80 to 90% of grants consultants, they are not reading these documents.
Yes, invest in your lifelong learning. Invest in your own professional development, because you are representing a profession. And instead of buying apps that would do activity for you and that would spit words for you, invest in trainings, in policy trainings, invest in things like that, or just invest your own time in reading or in asking other colleagues to help you out decipher among the cacophony of documents that the Commission is spitting out by the minute. Yes, not all are relevant, but we are a lot of colleagues on LinkedIn that daily post, this is essential for you to read. This is important for you to read. I'm doing that for my colleagues, free of charge. I'm not a consultant in that perspective. But again, you write projects and then you suffer from bad evaluations. Okay, remember, it's an 8% game. I have piles and piles of rejected projects. Brilliant, amazing, rejected, so whatever. But evaluators take on recognizing concepts. How are you going to provide recognizability if you don't know what you're talking about? You don't have the same terminology. You cannot write about people being in employment or in education and not have read the Union of Skills. That's preposterous. That's absurd. I don't agree with it. I don't like it. I will tear it to shreds because it has issues. But nonetheless, I read it and I have notations on the margin because that is the instrument that I have to use in order to make my stance recognizable in the ears of the evaluators.
No, thanks. Christine, on this topic, can you notice when you evaluate proposals if the proposal writer has some depth, background knowledge about if they just pulled it out or if they actually have been acquiring these documents that Diana is mentioning here?
I, for myself, do believe that it is possible to read that. And it is also possible to read through the lines whether or not somebody, and I want to say mean what they say, but if there's unnecessary fluff around what they actually want to do, I do believe you can read through that.
Mm-hmm.
Haze. Obviously, I've been doing this for over a decade. I've read an abundance of applications, and this is what I mean when I say you don't have to necessarily push your idea onto somebody. I know it's very vague what I'm saying, but I do wholeheartedly believe I can tell if somebody knows what they're talking about or if they're trying to bribe me with buzzwords. I have heard, being in that field for a long time, I have heard people writing applications saying, but no. Experts, they want to hear certain words. And if we don't deliver on these words, we get less points. And I was very surprised to hear that because obviously, you know who else is an assessor and you talk. I mean, you have to get a seminar every year to be brought up to speed with the latest regulations of the Commission when you read applications. So you talk to other assessors and their impression is also applicants seem to have the idea that you have to throw around you have to tick certain boxes in your word choice. And I'm not quite convinced that that is true, because obviously you have to get your point across, and you have to do that in a way that it actually reaches the assessor. But you can, like I said, you can't fake it till you make it. You cannot just throw words around and hope something sticks. It's maybe, to give you a really, really, really easy example, there was a time when translation tools haven't been so well developed just yet online, right? So right now, when you have certain translation tools and you put a sentence in, they're pretty good. Even from, like, if you switch languages back and forth, and they're pretty good. National agencies have rules when it comes to what language you can use in your application. But as a matter of fact, in the most applications, people are using English just for convenience, right?
Yeah.
There have been rules and laws that you can use your own mother tongue, your own language from your country. But people used English because I don't know, I can just speculate. Maybe they thought it gets them some brownie points for being very international. I don't know. But the English was so poorly translated that the meaning of what they wanted to say barely came across. So this is maybe an example of making your life harder than it has to be. Because if you want to fake it till you make it, and you want to get these extra brownie points because you burden yourself with rules that don't even exist. Oh, I'm going to write in English now because that's the language of Brussels or something. No, you just have to see, is it a necessity? Don't think 3 steps ahead. Don't try to find out the psychological trickery behind those applications forms. There is none.
That's the thing.
There is none. Like, as far as I know, there is no hidden psychological Rorschach testing. If you see this question, what do you see? There is, as far as I'm concerned, there is no such thing. So just answer the question truthfully, and don't try to anticipate.
It's because a lot of myths spread when it comes to something like what evaluators they think and what works in the different sections of different templates. There's all kinds of stories that grow larger and larger with, and it's natural in a world where everybody's competing for something that can be something almost unattainable, right? These stories spread because you have these forums, these communities that meet in Brussels, networking, so and people talk, right? So it's, so it's important what you say. It's important.
No, and obviously, I understand people try to find, like, to get an edge. People try to find not even a shortcut, but just something that makes them stand out. But there, like, from my experience, there is no shortcuts. You just either have a solid project idea and a realistic plan on how to implement it, and you even hit the right project format for that idea, then you already really good positioned. And if you then even being able to get your point across and explain why you want to do that, not in detail, but not when the founding fathers, nothing like just if you can explain, this is where we're coming from, this is what we're working with, this is where we want to go with that, and this is why. If you can somehow convey that in an honest manner, it's already really good, because at the end of the day, you don't really have a choice. There is no shortcut. There is no, like Diana said, you have to do the legwork. You have to read the documents. And we all know that can be quite painful. But yeah, at the end of the day, that's
a lot of money.
That's what you have to do. And just to again stress that one of the first and maybe one of the most important steps is you have to find out what program format is the correct one for you. So Diana was saying, I'm not even going there. I'm not even applying for decentralized Erasmus Plus or whatever, because that doesn't work. And I've mentioned before, the projects that she's working on, they're often lengthy in time. And as she said herself, they're the big budget projects. So you have to, know that before, because one of the things that can also go really wrong, you can hit just the right tone. You can have an amazing project idea that nobody else ever thought of, which, well, great, congratulations. But if you then chose the wrong format and you apply for a completely wrong line of funding, then there is a lot of bureaucracy behind it that says, that is amazing. I love that idea, but I can't give you the money because that's not what we're doing. This is why the whole system is so big and complex, because you want to cater to, and the Europeans are so creative. I have read fantastic applications over the years, fantastic ideas. I'm like, this is absolutely great, but not in this project line. You can't do that. And this is what I tried to explain when I said the program was turned upside down in the way it was organized. Like you have to have a certain mindset on how to approach the different project lines, and then decide. And I think that's very, very crucial, even before you write your first word.
We managed to have this conversation for an hour and about 10 minutes now without mentioning AI and ChatGPT. Now that's because Diana, she hates it, and she's a vermin resistant professional against them. And I perfectly understand. You've been even in my program explaining that in a discussion section now. But we will have many listeners listening to this that they are using it. So no matter the fact that you don't like them, then I would say that from me as a professional, because I also been doing this, use it, but don't let it take over your job. Let it be your own personal assistant and be critical to whatever comes out in the process that you're having here. If you're bad at storytelling and you're strong and technical, let it help you on the storytelling and then get you going, and then you finish it yourself or inspire you. If you're bad at the technical writing, good at the storytelling, let it help you with writing a convincing technical part, but write it through. Use it as a helper, not as your takeover, so taking over your work. That would be the advice from here. Diana, I know you will say, don't use it at all. Christine, what do you say?
I just, from my side, I'm going to say very little to that, because it's highly problematic. It's highly problematic from a GDPR point of view. It's highly problematic from an implementation point of view, because what does it get you if you have this fabulous application that's written by AI, and then you still have to be the one that's implementing it? AI is not coming and doing the legwork for you. They're not going to go and implement all the great ideas. So at the end of the day, you have to do it yourself anyways. So, and then for me, it's just like all these GDPR and creative rights, like red lights plopping off. So just look at what the regulations are for whatever you want to apply for.
Yeah.
Talk to your national agency if you want to apply decentralized. And that's all I'm going to say. It's a highly problematic topic.
It's not going to disappear.
Oh no!
That's the thing.
I think we've seen nothing yet.
Is to give. It's just the best thing is to guide people in a direction where they. Well, the thing is, and I agree on this, that if it just takes over what you do, it's got to be a mess because you have to implement these things in real life. So it's if it makes all sorts of fantastic AI ideas
And you
pulling it
must
out of an AIS.
you must not
and then
forget.
you need to you wrote around that to make it nice, and then you actually have to do it's so that's why I say be very critical. Use it if you have troubles with be creative. Use it. This is use it as a text helper, helping with these things that you, and then write it through,
And
so you can stand for what it comes. In the end.
one more thought. You must, thinking about AI and improving your writing, you must not forget that at the end of the project, for many, many project formats, you have to write a report. So you don't get all your money up front. It's not that you apply and then ding, 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 you get all your money. You have to do the project. Then you have to write a report for the majority of project forms that you have. And then you will get whatever the second or the third or the fourth installment of your project budget. And for many project forms, you even have, if you cannot show that you've done all the work, technically, the commission can even request money back that has already been paid. So AI really is highly problematic because it might be helping you to write, but it will not help you to do.
No. On that note, we have to we had a section here called the middle ground, but we actually did that discussion. We just had a very good, long, nice discussion on different elements here. So let's just say and park it there. And we also gave reflections and advice, but do you have anything you want to sum up on advice for proposal writers, in relation to creative storytelling and technical, is there anything you sort of can sum up?
There are a couple of things that I would like to point, if that's okay. Yes. One, don't chase the evaluator. Like Christine said, you don't need to convince them to agree on your idea. You need to convince that you're the specialist on what you're talking about and your experiment is sound enough to be worth giving a try. I work on an ecosystem where European Commission does not have evaluators specialized on the topic. So if I try and write technical language, everybody would go to sleep because nobody is trained in the technical language that we are using in the criminal correctional justice in a very specific approach. So that's out the window. Keep that in mind. You don't need to convince them to agree with you. You need to convince them that your experiment is valid enough, and our grants are exactly that, experiments. You're not going to change the world. You're just going to try an option with a specific partnership in a specific time frame for a specific context. That is one. Second, this is not a democracy. Whoever promoted, marketed, flashed the fact that Erasmus centralized partnerships, because now I'm talking specifically for me, is easy money, accessible, democratic, everyone is entitled, everyone has access, this is for everybody. I would like to strangle that person with my very own hands, because that is the biggest lie that anyone has ever publicly marketed. Erasmus is not for everybody. And this is the reality, and we can have a whole conversation why this is the case. This is a profession and an ecosystem and a context which is blighted and destroyed by myths that come from the Commission, myth that comes from us. So that is another whole topic to have a conversation on. Related to the AI, I have a position related to this topic because I can afford to have one. Both Christine and myself, we are privileged enough educated enough, experienced enough, to do not, and beautiful enough. Yes, amen. This needs to go out. And we are amazing women. Yes, we are. But being serious now, I can afford not to use AI because I am exceptionally brilliant at what I do. Not because I'm some special flower, just because I had enough exposure and experience and I studied. There are colleagues that do not have this privilege. Yeah. My privilege comes with responsibility. I cannot be irresponsible and promote this for something that it is not. I cannot waltz and say, this is easy, this is simple, this is for everybody, use the AI and cash will flow. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. And I'm doing a disfavor to my profession, which I respect and which I would fight to the teeth, and I would do whatever it takes to see it rise up to the European platform, to the value and merit that it has, because we are the drivers of the European policy. There is no EU policy without us. We are the conveyor belts. So while we recognize that, let's recognize that we need to be trained and skilled, and we need to learn the language and the whole thing. This doesn't get fixed by an instrument. So those are the caveats that I wanted to make. And then what I want to encourage my colleagues is to see themselves as professional writers. It doesn't matter that we are not writing sci-fi or we are not writing the next best novel. It is professional writing. We need to take care of ourselves as professional writers. We need to understand that this is an exceptionally competitive and harsh profession. And if you don't like your words, and if you need limited space, and if you need someone else to write your words, you have no place in this profession. You might be an amazing implementer, maybe, or you might be an amazing disseminator. But if you don't like writing your own words, this is not the profession for you, and it will kill you and eat you alive. Full stop.
That's why I was a bad proposer.
You see, not everybody needs to write proposals.
And Christine, do you have any?
I would just like to ask people to go and get informed, like Dana said, but maybe do that with your national agency. I have seen people who are, I don't want to say scared, but almost scared of their national agency, whereas the national agencies, they're really working hard to trying to get the word out, because that's literally their job, to say, look, here's this, and you can apply for that. And for people to please not be intimidated by the big construct that's the funding programs. I understand it's absolutely, if you jump in it on the deep end, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's just so much. But then just start with the people that actually know what they're talking about. So just go to your national agency. There's so many things the agencies offer. I have been working with agencies that offer counseling for first-time applicants, individual counseling. I have seen national agencies offer get to know each other events where you can talk to people. Obviously, this was much more common before COVID, but even these days, where you have gatherings, info evenings, there's videos. There's this website called EPALE, that's EPALE. That's the official platform from the Commission for Adult Education and Learning, and they even have some form of like making contact with other organizations function, where you can actually actively look like almost like on the dating app for project partners. You can say, oh, I'm looking for a project lead. I'm looking for a project partner in this area, in that area. Use the tools that are there. So one tool would be the e-pilot platform. Another tool would be the EPRP. That's the European Project Results Platform, where you can actually filter for projects that have already been done, either in your country or on the level you want to implement them, or thematically. And you can build yourself a little catalog of projects that have already been doing what you want to do. So maybe this has already been done, and you can use that and you can further develop it. So in a nutshell, I want to tell people, go out, don't be scared, because if you already give up before you started, you've already lost. So go to your national agency, use the tools that the Commission is offering. Don't go straight into the really heavy stuff of the program guide, but first find somebody who maybe can explain it to you, or a tool that can you use that makes things a little bit easier. There is project formats that offer projects like for 30,000 euros that are small enough for you to maybe get a foot in the door and make your first experiences with projects. So don't be afraid. Look around and then just submit. The worst thing that can happen is an expert is reading your application, and gives you a small feedback on what you can do better next time. That's literally the worst case scenario.
The worst case scenario is that they tell you how crappy it was.
We're not allowed to do that. Actually,
I know.
There's a minimum language level you have to obtain as an assessor.
Never in my life have I read some things.
Certain words or thoughts you shall not write down.
Never in my life would I imagine that I had to read such a... all right, thanks. We actually have to shut this program down because it's getting too long. Thanks. Final block here that I always have, the toughest challenge. And sometimes I sit when I do the rundown and think, what on hell am I going to ask people in the end? But sometimes there's a natural hook. But here, so toughest challenge between balance and between creative and technical. What is the toughest challenge, Diana? In your work, what do you find the roughest part?
The roughest part is soft diplomacy. That is the roughest thing, saying with a technical cadence, but with creative wording, that you want to change the status quo without saying that you want to change the status quo. Soft diplomacy.
Christine, what's the toughest challenge as an evaluator when you read through these things? Technical versus creative.
When you have an idea what they're trying to say, but they don't say it. So you can only assess what's written and not what you make it up to be in your head. So I can only give points for if you really write down if you want to do something. I might have an idea what it is that you're trying to say, but if you don't say it, I can give you points.
Thanks.
So go figure out between the two of us how you should angle your soft diplomacy, saying but not saying, but actually having to say. I promise.
There you go. We hope you appreciate our really hands-on approach to explaining how to write.
Absolutely. God help.
Don't do it, but then do it.
God help if anyone is actually sitting with pen and paper waiting for us to say something concrete. That is going to be a cold day in hell. But anyway, this is a marvelous profession as long as we understand it correctly And I encourage everyone that is interested to tiptoe or to jump in or to also listen to a lot of the episodes that Niels has, because a lot of relevant opinions create a more correct painting. And please reach out to us on LinkedIn. We are constantly providing mentorship and guidance and support for colleagues. And we want to do this out of our own inspiration and dedication for the profession. Don't shy in asking questions or in sharing info, because shying away doesn't help anyone.
Well, first of all, thanks, of course, for the callback to my previous work. I built up a good, solid back catalog of Erasmus Plus related episodes. And complementary, there are also the full series on how to write a proposal step by step. It's 25 or 26 episodes. That's focused on Horizon Europe, but there should be generic episodes also for for people who are in this quarter. When it comes to the resources Christine mentioned, I will put links. So now having the landing the plane here will start that. So thanks for listening to this episode to the end, my dear listeners. There will be, so go to my website if you like listening to this. There, go to thegrant.eu. There will be at this stage more than 190 episodes. Not everything about Erasmus Plus and proposal writing, but there's a lot about proposal writing. There's a lot about Erasmus Plus, and there's also evaluators episodes here and there. So do that while you're there. Don't forget to subscribe to my email list. This is how you support a humble, independent podcaster like myself. And what you should also do, of course, is to connect with me on LinkedIn. Diana here also. Christine on my. There's an episode for all my episodes have their own website on my platform. So on that site, you will find Diana's LinkedIn site, and you will find Christine's LinkedIn site. And I'll put links that Christine mentioned here, platforms that can help and so on. So you can click your way through that either while you listen or after that. So I will put also, if you listen to this, obviously most of you do in Spotify or Apple podcast, in the notes you have the resume of the podcast. I'll put a link so you can, if you sit in the train, not while you drive in the car. If you sit in a place where you can't kill people, click on the link and browse around. You can even do that while you listen to this. That's it. Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn, and also go by all means and like the grant page on LinkedIn. This is where all information comes through. This is also where I pick a lot of my guests up. So do that. No, that was that. Thanks for joining me. It was fantastic.
Thank you. Loads of fun.
Brilliant. That was really interesting. I'm learning something new even after all these years. Thank you very much.
Diana, you're always good for securing good, strong energy there. It's very nice. And Christine, thanks. You've been great guest, both of you. Thanks. It won't be the last time, Diana, And Christine, you're also welcome back. There's lots of things to talk about. I always like to have evaluators in. Let's say goodbye to the dear listeners. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good one. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Grant. All the Grant episodes have their own site on the Grant website. You'll find the link in the episode notes with the podcast host where you listen to your podcast. On the site for this episode, you'll find a link to Diana's and Christine's personal LinkedIn sites. And you will, of course, also find a link to the Timeline series, which is my podcast step-by-step series on how to prepare a proposal. Next week, it is Shorts Week with the last episode in the Research Management Short series that I do together with Stephanie Harfensteller. In the last episode, we look at how to secure that your strategy doesn't fade out when day-to-day work takes over. We look forward to that.